5 o'clock is our time. San Antonio's first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, Biden ends his re-election bid and Democrats begin to rally around Kamala Harris. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes and mornings. Your Weather Channel forecast for this Monday, mostly cloudy with thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90. Showers tonight with storms possible, a low of 74. Right now, 77 degrees. President Biden is ending his re-election bid, becoming the first president in decades not to run for a full second term. Fox's Jared Halpern has more on Decision 2024.
It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, President Biden wrote in a letter posted on social media, but says it is in the best interest of his party and the country to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling the duties as president for the remainder of his term. President Biden's decision not to run for re-election is a stunning departure. He insisted for weeks he would stay in the race, despite a growing number of Democrats calling for him to step aside following last month's poor debate performance. In a follow-up message, the president says he is offering his full support and endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Republican National Committee co-chair Laura Trump reacted with Fox's Hannity, touting former President Trump as the GOP nominee.
As far as we're concerned, from the Trump campaign and the RNC, our vision and our mission is very clear. We are running Donald J. Trump as our president.
And some Republicans think President Biden should take things a step further. Fox's Kevin Corke explains.
Mr. Biden no longer facing calls from Democrats to drop out of the race. He's facing calls from Republicans to resign altogether, which, of course, could now set off a series of showdowns on Capitol Hill as Democrats try to keep him on the job for the next, well, certainly through the election, next 107 days, and then beyond that through January of 2025. But the real reason Mr. Biden is dropping out is simple: donor money. If you've been following this carefully, you know that it really began to dry up in the wake of that disastrous debate performance.
And this comes as West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin is considering re-registering as a Democrat in order to run for president after leaving the party in May. And political professionals are not surprised at the Biden decision. SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson believes it was inevitable after the president's dismal debate performance, but he says Biden dug in his heels until the last minute.
We were hearing defiant noises coming out of the White House and out of the Biden family as recently as a couple of days ago. But time was running short. I mean, it's less than a month until the Democratic convention. So if this decision was going to be made, it was time to make it.
Wilson goes on to say he believes Biden is angry at the number of top Democrats, the president's longtime political allies, who have come out very publicly to demand he leave the race. Biden and his camp views that as a personal betrayal. And U.S. Rep. Lloyd Doggett is praising what he calls President Biden's selfless decision to withdraw. The Austin Democrat was the first in the party to call on Biden to step aside. Doggett issued his plea to Biden on July 2nd, a few days after that poor debate. Doggett is the longest-serving member of the Texas congressional delegation, which gave considerable weight to his call for Biden's withdrawal. And Democrats are hoping President Biden's decision to exit the race will help them out in their congressional races. Fox's Chad Pergram has more.
Now, the Senate will be tough to hold, but this move could give Democrats like Jon Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Tammy Baldwin fighting chances. Democrats only need to win a handful of seats to flip the House. The squad is now gravitating toward Harris. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez expressed concerns about deviating from President Biden, but now backs the vice president. Democrats believe they can fare better with someone other than President Biden at the top of the ticket, but Democrats feared catastrophic House and Senate losses if they failed to change things.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and former President Obama have not yet endorsed the vice president. And many San Antonio Democrats are supporting Biden's decision to bow out of the race and his endorsement of VP Kamala Harris. Larry Romo, national delegate and member of the Tejano Democrats, says Biden did what was right for the country. Romo says he supports and endorses Harris. Sonia De La Garza Walker with the Bear United Tejano Democrats says the country needs a woman in the White House. She says she's excited to see who Harris will pick as her running mate. And Tulsi Gabbard is throwing her support behind former President Trump. In a video she released on Sunday on X, the former Democratic Hawaii Congresswoman and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate says Vice President Harris is a warmonger.
The prospect of Kamala Harris making decisions about war and peace and where to send my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way is not only terrifying to us, it should be terrifying to every American.
The Democratic Party chairpersons in all 50 states, including Hawaii, have also backed the VP. For continuing coverage of Decision 2024, keep it right here. It is 5:06, news at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy, traffic and weather coming up.
Welcome into this beautiful day, Monday, July 22nd, 2024, 4 days until the Victor Wembanyama Olympics in Paris, 28 days until the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, 47 days until Taylor Swift's boyfriend opens the NFL season against the Baltimore Ravens, 50 days until the second presidential debate, and 106 days until the 2024 election. Charity McCurdy, anything going on in the news?
Oh, it's a slow news day, Chris. My goodness. You know, all the rumors turned out to be true despite what the Biden campaign officials tried to tell us on Friday.
If people were listening to you on Friday, you were saying President Joe Biden is expected by many to drop out over the weekend. I heard you say that many times. If people listened to the most trusted woman in San Antonio, Charity McCurdy, they would have been ready for it.
Yeah, and we thought we were going to have a calm weekend, but then the news came down around noon, and apparently Biden campaign aides handed that polling to him that proved Kamala Harris would fare better against Trump. So either that or it's the COVID. It's the medical condition that ultimately was the determining factor.
Well, we are all over this story. Randy Beamer will be in studio at 6 o'clock. We've got all kinds of experts, national correspondent Rory O'Neill, national correspondent Aaron Real, White House correspondent John Decker, Congressman Tony Gonzalez, and more. We're going to have it all for you. Everything you need to know about Biden dropping out and what's next for the Democrats. Kamala Harris, not a done deal yet. We'll walk you through everything with experts throughout the morning. But right now, let's get this party started with traffic and weather together. Your Weather Channel forecast, prepare to get wet. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms, heavy rainfall possible tonight. High today 91, overnight lows in the mid-70s. More rain likely tomorrow morning, high tomorrow 86. Scattered thunderstorms on Wednesday with a high of 86. Right now, 73 in Kerrville, 77 in New Braunfels. It's partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's first news. Charity, moments like this remind me of that Chinese, it's known as a blessing and a curse. It's an ancient Chinese proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. Mm-hmm. And we certainly live in interesting times.
Big time. It's if you miss one day, you can miss a major development in this political season. I've never seen so many twists and turns.
And speaking of twists and turns, and we'll get more into this throughout the morning, and I want to hear from you later this morning on this, along with Randy Beamer and others. So a lot of Republicans, House Republicans, I heard Elise Stefanik and others say, Biden needs to resign the presidency because if you're not fit to run, you're not fit to serve. I think it's a case of watch what you ask for, because if you give Kamala Harris incumbency, she can use the bully pulpit. She can call, she can do a White House Oval Office press conference or address at any time, or a press conference. That's going to get her airtime. And what if there was a crisis in the country or in the world between now and Election Day, and as president, she handled it well? I think Republicans should think twice about trying to get Biden to drop out and hand the presidency to Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it would definitely give her a head start. But as far as whether she's capable, that's yet to be seen. I think that's why you have some Democrats holding off on giving their full endorsement, like President Biden has.
Speaking of is she capable, you just mentioned it in the newscast. I saw Tulsi Gabbard on X and on her Instagram account, and she ran on the Democratic ticket against Harris in 2020, didn't get the nomination, of course, but she says, as you reported, Kamala Harris is a warmonger. She'll be part of this cabal, this war machine that Biden's such a big part of. I woke up to that this morning and I watched all of it, and just a scathing attack on Kamala Harris by Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, clearly she has to win over the hearts and minds of her own party. Not everybody is completely confident in her ability. So we have to see how things play out moving forward. Could this mean, with this open convention, will other candidates step up to challenge her? We're hearing West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin may go back to a Democrat just so he can run for president.
He has a very manly chin, that Joe Manchin. Whenever I look at his chin, I go, hey, that is a man chin yes. Right there, baby. And as we well know, the Democrats not nearly as unified as Republicans. When Republicans get behind an issue or a leader, they make it happen. Democrats are all over the place. Yeah, this could get very ugly in the Democrat Party. We will certainly cover that. All right, coming up, we got questions for you about what President Joe Biden announced yesterday, about what Kamala Harris might mean to Decision 2024. We will get into that. And Joe Pags at 5:40, Joe Pags of the Joe Pags Show is going to break everything down that happened in the last 8 days. It's been a crazy 8 days in American history, and he'll walk us through that as well. You don't want to miss any of it. We've got all the coverage, everything you need to know about Biden stepping down. Will it be Kamala Harris? What this means for the presidential race. Experts throughout the morning, including Randy Beamer in studio, WOAI News Time 5:15. Good morning, everybody. Let's see. We got Rooster, Tim, Echo, Travis. Welcome in, everybody. Yeah, Mr. T will be back on Thursday. All is well with Mr. T. So nothing to worry about there. We miss him. Man, I'm sure he'd love to be in here this morning to react to this big story. Just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together as we continue to bring you full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race and what's next for the Democrats. Randy Beamer is going to join us at 6 o'clock. But first, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
Well, President Biden is dropping out of the presidential race and throwing his support to his VP, Kamala Harris. Former President Obama is not endorsing Harris just yet, and Republicans want President Biden to resign now, saying he's unfit to finish out his term. Well, the very latest coming up right now, traffic and weather together.
Let's get a comprehensive look at the wet weather coming. Here's News 4 San Antonio meteorologist Jeanette Calle. Good morning, Jeanette. Well, thank you, Jeanette. Right now, 76 in Alamo Heights, 78 in Leon Valley. Here, partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's first news. She is Charity McCurdy. Randy Beamer will be in beginning at 6 o'clock. He'll be with us until 9 o'clock this morning. He's a big part of our Decision 2024 coverage. Mr. T is out. He will be back on Wednesday. We're looking forward to his return then. EJ Pacheco and Andrew Zimmel flying the Millennium Falcon. Andrew is directing our online video feed. You can go to YouTube and search 1200 WOAI. You'll see our online feed. There is a live video chat in real time. You can chat with all of us and with other viewers. And Charity McCurdy, again, I just think that what a crazy 8 days it was from Saturday a week ago. A former president and perhaps the next president, an assassination attempt on his life, and 8 days later, the sitting president of the United States chooses not to run for office and clearly forced out of what was his true decision, what he wanted to do, which was seek re-election.
Yeah, and we got repeated assurances from the president himself that he was staying in this race. He was committed. And here we are, just 4 weeks, I guess, until the DNC in Chicago. And, you know, the Democrats, they are not united. I mean, they're still divided. Kamala Harris has her work cut out for her to gain the full support of her party. But as far as President Biden's decision, you know, we're hearing from President Biden's youngest brother who told CBS and ABC News that he thinks it was the president's health that really factored into his decision to step down. So, and again, now you have Republicans saying that, you know what, if Biden's not fit to run for another term, he's not fit to serve out the remainder of this term. So I wonder if the president will ignore those calls.
And we will see, Charity, as you well know, you were the first person to tell me this morning, 10:30 this morning, we will see Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time speaking, as we know that she now is seeking the Democratic nominee for the presidency. That should be some must-see TV.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll make official comments about the fact that she is seeking the Democratic presidential nomination, and she's picked up some notable endorsements. You have Hillary Clinton, former President Bill Clinton. But still, we haven't heard from Hakeem Jeffries, former President Obama. There's still a lot of big name Democrats, Chuck Schumer, that have yet to throw their support behind Harris.
One person who has, and I think he's on the short list for vice president, is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Shapiro is young. Pennsylvania is a swing state. He has supported Kamala Harris. And you never know, there might have already been a backroom phone call, Charity, between Harris and Josh Shapiro. It's like, hey, man, you do me a solid here and jump on board the bandwagon early and I'll make it worth your while.
Yeah, I know Gavin Newsom has also immediately come out and congratulated her and endorsed her. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of potential running mates. You mentioned Shapiro, Senator Mark Kelly, Andy Beshear, of course, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is also another potential Harris running mate, but she's got to get her party's nomination first.
All right, Charity, we want to hear from the people. We want our listeners to sound off. We'll play it on the air. How do you feel about what Biden did, drop out of the race? What do you think about Kamala Harris? Will she get the Democratic nomination? Is she a shoo-in? Is she not? And what does this mean for the 2024 race for the presidency? Charity, how do they let us know?
The free iHeartRadio app. You search 1200 WOAI, hit that red talkback button, 30 seconds to give us your thoughts.
And we'll be playing your comments on the air. Coming up, Joe Pags from the Joe Pags Show, his analysis of where we are right now. We'll hear from you. Randy Beamer in studio with us beginning at 6 o'clock this morning. We are all over this story. Full team coverage of President Joe Biden's dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Right now, your Fox Business Report, WOAI News Time 525. Welcome in, everybody, on the live feed. Travis, Tim, Echo, Jacob C. Hernandez, good morning. Wow, Travis drove through a monsoon from Bernie to San Antonio. From what we're hearing, get ready for more monsoons. Charity McCurdy is coming up. I am drinking coffee today for the first time in, I think, was it 9 days? I stopped on a Friday. So I went to Friday was 8, Saturday 9, Sunday 10. I went 10 days without caffeine. And I was going to try to keep it going. And today was just so crazy with the crazy news. And we've got such a big show planned. I wanted to make sure that that I had the fuel in me to do my thing. Thank God for coffee. It's the wonder drug that works wonders. Coffee, because management frowns upon crack. Thank you. Coffee, because crystal meth is illegal. Wow, Travis, that's fascinating. Travis, this is a very interesting post. Travis, I am probably in a very small minority. I don't like Biden, don't like Harris, don't like Trump. RFK Jr. is a freak show. Who the hell am I supposed to vote for? I think, Travis, in that case, it's the lesser of, I guess, three evils if RFK Jr. is on the ballot. So Travis, who's out there that you like, man? Matt Quest 822, welcome. Jonathan Sanchez, good morning. M1A1, welcome in. If there's anybody in here, I only see your name if you post in the chat. So, and I know not everybody does that. So welcome in if you're here. Got a big show today. A lot of big guests. 610 Representative Tony Gonzalez. Yeah, and Tim says Travis should write somebody in, but as we know, practically, I mean, I guess you could do that as a protest, but as we know as a practicality, that's not going to work. So you almost have to lesser of the evils who you think will do the least damage. And I think then you look to 2028 and you say, all right, who do I support? And I think you get in touch with that person and you advise them to run. And if you are so inclined, you support that candidacy. I am an independent. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I generally have a distrust of career politicians. Now, you can argue Trump is not a career politician. Got into it late in the game, and you can certainly make that argument. But yeah, I don't like how the party machines operate. I think they do a lot of things that are not in the interest of the American people. A party, by definition, I mean, it's, and Charity's coming right up. I might not finish this thought, but here she comes.
5:30 is our time. San Antonio's first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, President Biden bows out of the race for the White House. Kamala Harris is looking for party support as she wins Biden's endorsement. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes in mornings. Your Weather Channel forecast for this Monday, mostly cloudy with thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90. Showers tonight with storms possible, a low is 75. Right now, 77 degrees. Vice President Kamala Harris reacts to President Biden's decision to not continue on to accept the Democratic nomination for president. Fox's Gernal Scott has more on Decision 2024.
Vice President Harris's first thoughts were of gratitude, thanking President Biden for his decades of service, and called it an honor to serve with him and watch as he puts the American people and the country above everything else. Her thoughts then turned to President Biden endorsing her as nominee. The vice president said she is honored, but plans to earn and win her party's nomination. Former President Bill Clinton and former party nominee Hillary Clinton have endorsed the vice president, as has South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, whose support vaulted President Biden to the White House 4 years ago. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And speaking to Fox's Hannity, South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem made this prediction if Harris becomes the Democratic presidential nominee.
I believed she'd pick a woman to be her vice president, so it's a historic ticket, and they can change the whole conversation.
Some possible names floated as Harris's running mates include Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. And speaking to Fox News, Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz predicts Republican attacks will look similar if Harris becomes the nominee.
Republicans are going to try to make the same case against her they were making against Biden. Oh, it's the border. Oh, it's Israel. It's going to be the same playbook. Obviously, she is her own person.
Meantime, House Speaker Mike Johnson is calling on President Biden to resign, saying if he's not fit to run for president, he is not fit to serve as president. And Democrats and Republicans are both wondering about how the rest of the race will play out. Republican Party of Texas Chair Abraham George believes that now that Biden is out, do Democrats even believe he should fill out the rest of his term?
We're trying to figure out if is he fit, according to them, is he fit to continue to be the commander in chief? Is that an option for him now? If he's not fit for a election, why is he fit for continue to be the commander in chief?
As to a new candidate, George also finds it significant that former President Obama, in his statement Sunday afternoon, did not endorse Vice President Harris as the party's nominee. And Biden's decision to drop out of the race could affect both parties in Congress. Here's Fox's Chad Pergram.
The switch out at the top of the ticket might not be so much about being able to defeat former President Trump, but saving seats down ballot. The Senate will be tough to hold, period, but a switch at the top could help Democrats with the House of Representatives. The current breakdown is 220 Republicans to 212 Democrats. Democrats just need to flip a handful of those seats. They think that House Republicans are vulnerable. Now, Democrats have done nothing but rail against Republicans and how they've run the House for a year and a half. Republicans gave them plenty of fodder, burning through Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
And South Texas politicians are reacting in different ways to Biden's announcement. Democrats like Congressman Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar praised Biden for his decades of service, with Cuellar saying he would support the next Democratic nominee, but did not mention Vice President Kamala Harris. Republican Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz called the Biden situation a scandal that shows everything that is wrong with Washington. De La Cruz went on to call the Biden administration failed and corrupt and said voters must support former President Trump in November. And other Texas lawmakers are expressing their reactions to the announcement.
Austin Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who was one of the first voices to urge the president to drop out of the race, called the decision courageous, putting country over ego in a way Donald Trump never could. State Representative James Tallarico tells KXAN he echoes those sentiments, calling it a stunning act of patriotism.
Yeah, Vice President Harris has my full support, and I have every confidence that she is going to beat Donald Trump this November.
U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Dallas, however, blamed Democrats for it, saying she'd only support Kamala Harris and no one else on the ticket. Eric Lycum, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
And President Biden is canceling a trip to Houston in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Mayor John Whitmire said on Sunday that Biden had planned to be in Houston on Thursday to recognize the city's preparation for the storm. Biden was diagnosed with COVID on Wednesday for the third time, but it's not clear if that is why his trip was canceled. It is 5:37 now with breaking crime news from around the country. Here's Nancy Grace. Traffic and weather together in a minute, but first, to check of your money and the world of business, we say good morning to Ed Corey live at the Bloomberg News Desk. All right, thanks, Ed. News at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy. Here's traffic and weather.
San Antonio's First News, she's Charity McCurdy. Randy Beamer is on his way in. He'll join us at 6 o'clock. Also at 6 o'clock, Representative Tony Gonzalez will join us, 6:10 for Representative Gonzalez to be more accurate. His thoughts on Biden dropping out of the race. But right now, let's check in with Joe Pags for his analysis of where we are right now. Joe, has this been a crazy last week or what? You too, Joe. Charity, great analysis by Joe Biden. And think about that. The Heritage Foundation and other Republicans will be suing in multiple states to keep Biden on the ballot. That could get very ugly for the Democrats.
This is far from a united party following Biden's exit, although that's what it seems a majority of Democrats wanted. But I mean, this could get really, really ugly between now and August 19th when that convention begins in Chicago for the Democrats.
And I agree, between now and November, if Biden can be left on that ballot in some states, what kind of chaos would that cause? All right, coming up, we will hear from you. How are you feeling about Biden stepping down, possibly, maybe, probably Kamala Harris getting the Democratic nomination, what it means for Decision 2024? That will get you caught up on headlines, traffic, weather, and more. WOAI News Time, 546. Jacob C. Hernandez with an interesting thought. I wish we had a no confidence choice on the ballot or in general to force new candidates. There are some countries that do. That would be interesting. Yeah, Echo, the way this is set up, there are so many, there's multiple studios in this building. So Charity's coming from a studio. I'm in a different studio. The control room where Andrew and EJ is in a different room. Pags, so the audio of Pags was wired through the control room, which is not wired into the YouTube stream, which is so weird, but it's the way it is currently. So in that case, his audio was fired through the control room, and that's why you guys didn't hear it on YouTube. We don't like it. We're working on it. It's a current flaw in the system, but we're learning as we go, and we're trying to refine what we do along the way. No, it's not lack of funding, Echo. It's complexity of engineering. It's YouTube is not built for this many video and audio inputs from a radio station. You know, we're not a television station. So it's just the complexity of routing that audio in. Andrew's working on a fix. Just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together as we continue our full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Randy Beamer joins us in the 6 o'clock hour. And at 6:10, we'll talk with Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez, his thoughts on what took place yesterday. First, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
Following growing concerns about his mental fitness, President Biden is ending his re-election bid. The Democratic delegations from at least 5 states have endorsed VP Harris for president, and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is reportedly considering a run for president. We'll have the very latest coming up right now, traffic and weather together.
Your Weather Channel forecast, you're going to get wet. So have an umbrella all week long. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms today. Heavy rainfall possible tonight. High 91. Overnight lows in the mid 70s. Tomorrow morning rain is likely with a high of 86. Wednesday, scattered thunderstorms with a high of 86. Right now, 76 in Bernie, 75 at the Snake Farm. It is partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's First News. My goodness gracious, what a political year 2020 is. And we still got a long way to go. We got 106 days until the 2024 election. We're 28 days out from the Democratic National Convention, which could be a free-for-all. She's Charity McCurdy. I'm Chris Duell. Randy Beamer coming into the studio around 6 o'clock. Andrew Zimmel, EJ Pacheco flying the Millennium Falcon. We are live on YouTube. If you want to watch the show and react live and in real time in the chat, go look for 1200 WOAI on YouTube. And Charity, you know, we are seeing, as you've been documenting, a lot of prominent Democrats lining up behind Kamala Harris, Bill and Hillary Clinton. You mentioned California Governor Gavin Newsom, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I saw him on Real Time with Bill Maher over the weekend. He was really interesting and took a big shot at J.D. Vance, which was memorable. But we go back to the Democrat Party is so splintered, and it's kind of, you know, they don't all march to the beat of the same drum like Republicans often do when it's time to elect somebody, certainly a president. Going to be very, very interesting to see, will they coalesce around Kamala Harris, or will things get crazy by convention time?
You know, I guess it's going to come down to the latest polling because it shows previous polls that I guess Kamala Harris polls better against Trump versus Biden. But again, she has like 7 days to build a campaign around herself in order to try to take down former President Trump. And I guess she'll have access to Biden's campaign cash because her name was on that ticket. So there is that. And I am hearing fundraising is already funneling in with the announcement that Biden is endorsing Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee for president. So things seem to be working in her favor, but things can change. And we have yet to hear from some top Democrats on whether or not they're going to support Harris.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. You mentioned fundraising, and I heard a couple of numbers since Biden announced yesterday in that one-page letter that he put out on X and social media. I had heard a figure of 24 million. Then I heard that overnight that rose to 45 million in fundraising. So, and apparently all those big Democratic donors who were abandoning Biden now seem like they're going to come back for Kamala Harris. So that is all big news as well.
And you got to bet that the Trump campaign was combing through old footage of Kamala Harris, looking for, word salads, her infamous Cackle. They're putting together their own attack ads aimed at Harris, and already on the campaign trail in Michigan, where Trump and J.D. Vance held their first joint rally. Trump was going after Kamala Harris, her failure at the southern border. So it's just the beginning.
You mentioned her failure at the southern border. When I think of her and her job as vice president, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, because we were told that Kamala Harris would be the border czar. And for the longest time, she didn't go to the border. There's some, you talk about audio and video. There's some clips of her. I think she was somewhere in a European country, and they said, "Why haven't you gone to the border yet?" And she gave some ridiculous answer like, "I don't need to go to the border right now." And so I think one huge thing that Republicans can really beat up on Kamala Harris for is the abysmal job she did as quote unquote border czar.
Yeah, but I think the Trump campaign will probably have to toe a fine line when it comes to their attacks on Kamala Harris. She's a woman. She's a minority. There's a lot of issues at play here, especially when they do that first debate in September. I believe that's still on, but Trump did issue an ultimatum saying he wants it to be switched from the ABC to Fox News for that September 10th debate.
We shall see if he prevails in that stipulation. Charity, we're asking the people, the listeners, we want to hear from you listening in. What do you think of Biden's dropping out? What do you think of Kamala Harris? Is she more of a threat in the race for the presidency to former President Trump or not? What do you think the Democrats are going to do? You think they're going to go with Kamala Harris? You think somebody else might get in there, including Michelle Obama? Long shot that it sounds like right now. Charity, how do they get in touch with us?
The free iHeartRadio app. You search 1200 WOAI, hit that red circle talkback button, 30 seconds to give us your thoughts.
We have a huge 6 o'clock hour coming up. Randy Beamer in studio, Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez on Biden's dropping out and what's next. White House correspondent John Decker on this situation in the next hour as well. Charity McCurdy at the top of the hour with everything you need to know on this Monday morning, WOAI News Time 5:57. All right, so I just turned it on right now. Yeah, we'll okay.
I was going to say, we try to find that Kamala. I don't need to do the border audio.
If you can.
I'll do a quick speak.
Yeah, that would be nice. Okay, thank you. Good idea. Good morning, Sleepy. Ben W., good morning. Let's see. Tim, I would love for you to be an engineer here. Anybody who has technical skills and can come in here and get the job done and solve our problems, man, that would be great. I got to get some papers organized here. I've got all kinds of show prep for Randy Beamer. Oh, and he says, on the way, I'll be there in about 10. Okay. All right. Let me get Randy Beamer's show prep. Charity McCurdy coming up here at the top, and then Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez. But you know, Tim, you still might be an upgrade for us. I'm kidding. I keyed our engineers, our crack engineering team on crack.
2021.
Stand by. Thanks. Yeah, and I didn't do it in the 5. I need to get to where we start bringing in some of that audio because I'm not used to it. I haven't done that, so hopefully I'll do that coming up.
6 o'clock is our time.
And what did
San
she say,
Antonio's
essentially?
first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, Biden ends his re-election bid, and Democrats begin to rally around Kamala Harris. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10
But is it
minutes
good?
in
I mean,
mornings.
does it communicate the way I expressed it? It's,
Yeah.
okay.
Because she just didn't. She's not,
Okay.
She hasn't gone. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Right. And this is, again, from 3 years ago, and she's only been to the border like once since then.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And if you can confirm that, I mean, I think I'm 90% sure that's right. But if I say that, I want to be totally accurate. How many, like Google, how many times has Harris been to the border? Cool.
Your
Thanks.
Weather Channel forecast for this Monday. Mostly cloudy, thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90. Showers tonight with storms possible, a low of 75. Right now, 77 degrees. Well, President Biden is ending his re-election bid, becoming the first president in decades not to run for a full second term. Fox's Jared Halpern has more on Decision 2024.
It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, President Biden wrote in a letter posted on social media, but says it is in the best interest of his party and the country to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling the duties as president for the remainder of his term. President Biden's decision not to run for re-election is a stunning departure. He insisted for weeks he would stay in the race, despite a growing number of Democrats calling for him to step aside following last month's poor debate performance. In a follow-up message, the president says he is offering his full support and endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Speaking to Fox's Mark Levin, Texas Senator Ted Cruz says he does not believe President Biden's health challenges began this year.
The reason they jumped ship is once the American people realized that he was incompetent, they were afraid they're going to lose. So we're now seeing the party circling the wagons around Kamala Harris. They want a coronation.
Meantime, Tulsi Gabbard is throwing her support behind former President Trump. In a video she released on X, the former Democratic Hawaii Congresswoman says Vice President Harris will be a dangerous president.
I'm going to sound the same warning now that I have been for years, going all the way back to 2020 when both Kamala and I were running for president on the Democratic ticket. She is unfit and unqualified to be our president and commander-in-chief.
The Democratic Party chairperson in all 50 states, including Hawaii, have also backed the VP. And some Republicans think President Biden should take things a step further. Here's Fox's Kevin Corke.
Mr. Biden no longer facing calls from Democrats to drop out of the race. He's facing calls from Republicans to resign altogether, which, of course, could now set off a series of showdowns on Capitol Hill as Democrats try to keep him on the job for the next, well, certainly through the election, next 107 days, and then beyond that through January of 2025. But the real reason Mr. Biden is dropping out is simple: donor money. If you've been following this carefully, you know that it really began to dry up in the wake of that disastrous debate performance.
And this comes as West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin is considering re-registering as a Democrat in order to run for president after leaving the party in May. And political professionals are not surprised at the Biden decision. SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson believes it was inevitable after the president's dismal debate performance, but he says Biden dug in his heels until the last minute.
We were hearing defiant noises coming out of the White House and out of the Biden family as recently as a couple of days ago. but time was running short. I mean, it's less than a month until the Democratic convention. So if this decision was going to be made, it was time to make it.
And Wilson goes on to say he believes Biden is angry at the number of top Democrats, the president's longtime political allies, who have come out very publicly to demand that he lead the race. U.S. Rep. Lloyd Doggett is praising what he calls President Biden's selfless decision to withdraw. The Austin Democrat was the first in the party to call on Biden to step aside. Doggett issued his plea to Biden on July 2nd, a few days after that poor debate performance. Doggett is the longest-serving member of the Texas congressional delegation, which gave considerable weight to his call for Biden's withdrawal. And Democrats are hoping President Biden's decision to exit the race will help them out in their congressional races. Here's Fox's Chad Pergram.
Now, the Senate will be tough to hold, but this move could give Democrats like Jon Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Tammy Baldwin fighting chances. Democrats only need to win a handful of seats to flip the House. The squad is now gravitating toward Harris. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez expressed concerns about deviating from President Biden, but now backs the vice president. Democrats believe they can fare better with someone other than President Biden at the top of the ticket, but Democrats feared catastrophic House and Senate losses if they failed to change things.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and former President Obama have not yet endorsed the vice president. And one of President Biden's staunchest supporters has been San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg.
Mayor Nirenberg took to X, calling Biden a transformational leader and a friend of San Antonio's working families. He praised the president for standing up to special interests to cap insulin costs in a city where 1 in 6 is diabetic, and for standing by Uvalde, pushing for more gun controls. Quote, he took the slings and arrows that come from stepping into the arena and throughout it all reminded us that strength of character matters. I'll be forever proud to call him partner and friend, unquote. Eric Lycum, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
It is 6:06, news at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy. Traffic and weather coming up.
Echo. I've done this before, so I didn't drink coffee for 10 days. I'm drinking it this morning for the first time. When you go off it, and I've done it, after like a week, I feel the same way. When you have coffee after you haven't had it for 7 or 10 days, you really feel it. You really feel you're kind of bouncing off the walls a little bit. And yet, after like 1 or 2 days, you're back to it's, just the way things are, and you drink coffee in the morning and you function. But I'm really feeling the caffeine this morning. So it's certainly feelable. Okay, Travis is asking somebody's question about Nixon. I think it's sleepy. If you pardon someone for something they have not been convicted of yet. Good point, Travis. Yeah, that's Nixon was not tried, impeached, or convicted. So, that's a pre-pardon. Good point. Yeah, Travis asking about coffee, when I first stopped, I had like 2 days, maybe 3, because I had the headaches on Saturday and Sunday. I had Friday, Saturday, a mild headache, caffeine withdrawal, I'm assuming. So, but that it wasn't awful, but it was mild. You could feel it. You could still function. It wasn't debilitating. It wasn't great. It wasn't pleasant. But that went away by the Monday. So last coffee was on a Friday morning 2 weeks ago. And then by the Monday, I was fine. But it's still, I get up sometimes at 1 in the morning, sometimes at 1:30, depending on, and with Mr. T out, I've got to do extra prep that he would normally do. So, when Mr. T is here, I can sleep in until 2:30 if I want. But when he's not here, I got to be up by 1:30, sometimes 1 o'clock, because I move so slowly in the morning, especially without coffee. Representative Tony Gonzalez coming up. San Antonio's First News, Randy Beamer, will join us shortly. Full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for the Democrats and the Republicans. Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez joins us next. But first, let's get you caught up on traffic and weather together. Your Weather Channel forecast. Get ready to get wet. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms. Heavy rainfall possible tonight. High 91. Overnight lows in the mid-70s. Morning rain likely tomorrow with a high of 86. Scattered thunderstorms on Wednesday. Right now, 76 at Stinson Field. 78 at the Pearl. It is partly cloudy. 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's First News, Charity McCurdy. Randy Beamer just stepped into the studio, and in a moment we are standing by. Andrew Zimmel is on the line with Representative Tony Gonzalez's people, and we hope to be connected to Representative Tony Gonzalez. But Randy Beamer, I got to ask you, you have covered politics, you have covered presidential debates, you've interviewed presidents throughout your long, illustrious career. What did you think yesterday when the news broke that Biden dropped out?
It's one of those things we expected could happen, but then when it happened, it's one of the, well, wow, what happens now? Oh my gosh, it actually happened. This is going to unleash all kinds of, the dominoes going to roll, and who knows where they're going to land. And it's one of the things that still this morning I heard that Joe Manchin was giving his first interview talking about that he wants the middle to be represented. So he's thinking he may want to re-register as a Democrat. He left the Democratic Party. He had talked about no labels. He had played with the idea of running for president and not. And so he may throw a wrench into the Democratic's plans. We'll see.
All right, Randy, let's check in with Republican Representative and Navy veteran Tony Gonzalez. Congressman Gonzalez, welcome in. Randy?
Congressman, you were watching a Republican convention last week that was united for everybody else, although not for people like you maybe who had gotten hammered by state Republican parties. What do you think watching this one coming up for the Democrats that they are going to try to unite behind Kamala Harris?
I wouldn't say that, Randy. I mean, what's not to like about Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock? And there's a lot of energy certainly on the Republican Party, and primaries are meant to have dust ups. I think you saw that too, especially on the Republican side. You had everybody that ran against Donald Trump get up there and say positive things and kind of move on from there. Good luck for the Democrats on trying to one up that convention. But I think next month in Chicago, they have their own challenges on their side to figure out what they're going to do next. And it seems like a lot of people are circling behind Kamala Harris, but I think there's a lot of people that aren't going to get on board. And I think I'll just mention that with Senator Manchin and others that just said, I don't know if she necessarily can beat Donald Trump. I think many people believe she can.
And Congressman, do you think this was the plan all along, despite what Biden campaign officials told us up until Sunday morning, or was this truly a last-minute decision by the president?
I think it's pretty clear to anybody that Joe Biden has had problems for a long time. And this is one of the things that I was worried about before. I'm worried about now is everyone's talking about November, and we don't swear in a new president until January. That's 6 months from now. Who is taking care of the country now? I'm talking today, this week. We saw this CrowdStrike thing that happened with Microsoft a few days ago that literally stranded people, and I know Border Patrol was impacted, a lot of 911 services. So that's what I worry about. Is like I get it. Everyone's talking about the presidential race. It's a presidential year, but what about what is going on today? I don't know if necessarily that was always the plan for them to kind of bail out now, but it was pretty evident, I think, to anybody watching that Joe Biden has been ill for a long time.
And Congressman, yet I wonder from a Republican strategy point of view, if Biden is forced to resign, and I know a lot of Republicans say now resign. If you can't run for president, you can't be president. Do Republicans really want Kamala Harris to have incumbency, to have the presidency? I mean, she can speak from the Oval Office at any time. That's going to have influence. What if there is a national or global crisis and she handles it well? Do you think that's a good idea politically for the Republicans?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, what you're going to get from me is you're always going to, I wear my opinions and my positions on my sleeve. I think what you're hearing is a lot of politicians talk like politicians, right? They're supposed to say these things. They're supposed to, or, they think they're supposed to get up there and say, oh, he needs to resign today, knowing full well, unless there's a serious medical issue, that Joe Biden is not going anywhere. And even if there were, they would hide him or they'd do these other things. There's too much at stake, if you will. But once again, I'm trying to not look through the political lens. And I think, to your point, probably not a good idea to allow her to kind of get in the seat, if you will. But I'm looking at it through the lens of like, hey, just who's taking care of the day to day? I'm worried about the country. There's a lot going around in the world. Israel just bombed Yemen, the Houthis in Israel. I mean, in Yemen, and it just reminds me a lot of pre 9/11, where there's all these things happening. No one thinks, everyone thinks everything will be fine until it isn't. I don't want to see anything like that happen. I spend a lot of my time on the national security piece.
He is a Navy veteran, 23rd District Congressman Tony Gonzalez. We hope to speak with the congressman again very, very soon. We appreciate his perspective this morning. WOAI News Time 617. Just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together, Randy Beamer is in studio as we bring you complete team coverage of Biden dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. First, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
President Biden is dropping out of the presidential race and throwing his support to his vice president, Kamala Harris. Former President Obama has not yet endorsed Kamala Harris, and Republicans want President Biden to resign now, saying he's unfit to finish out his term. Well, the very latest coming up right now, traffic and weather together.
Weather Channel forecast very wet for the next few days. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms today. Heavy rainfall possible tonight. High 91, overnight low 74. Right now, partly cloudy 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's first news. Charity McCurdy, I'm Chris Duell. Mr. T will be back on Thursday. Randy Beamer in studio for analysis throughout the morning. And Randy, unlike Republicans, we know Democrats are kind of more scattered. It's like herding cats to get them to agree on something.
In disarray most of the time, Democrats. And so we're going to see what happens. There's more, first of all, there's more delegates, close to 4,000, and then plus the more or less super delegates. So there's more than 4,000 that are coming up. But I think they realize they have seen one of the most unified parties, or at least on TV. They papered over all the differences in the Republican Party. That's going to happen again. They're going to have to get behind Kamala.
And we will talk more about this. In fact, one of our experts, he's the best in the business, White House correspondent and attorney John Decker, joins us at 6:40 for his analysis on where we are right now in the 2024 race. Charity McCurdy with everything you need to know right here at the bottom of the hour, WOAI News Time, 625.
6:30 is our time. San Antonio's first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, President Biden bows out of the race for the White House, and Kamala Harris is looking for party support as she wins Biden's endorsement. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes in mornings. Your Weather Channel forecast for this Monday, mostly cloudy, thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90, showers tonight with storms possible, a low of 75. Right now, 77 degrees. Vice President Kamala Harris is reacting to President Biden's decision to not continue on to accept the Democratic nomination for president. Fox's Gernal Scott has more on Decision 2024.
Vice President Harris's first thoughts were of gratitude, thanking President Biden for his decades of service, and called it an honor to serve with him and watch as he puts the American people and the country above everything else. Her thoughts then turned to President Biden endorsing her as nominee. The vice president said she is honored, but plans to earn and win her party's nomination. Former President Bill Clinton and former party nominee Hillary Clinton have endorsed the vice president, as has South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, whose support vaulted President Biden to the White House 4 years ago. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And speaking to Fox's Hannity, South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem made this prediction if Harris becomes the Democratic presidential nominee.
I believed she'd pick a woman to be her vice president, so it's a historic ticket, and they can change the whole conversation.
And speaking to Fox's Mark Levin, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise says Democrats rejected the will of their base.
Frankly, I think it's very telling that the leaders of the Democrat Party who were really behind this coup of Joe Biden, it started with Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer, they have not endorsed Kamala.
And former President Obama has not yet endorsed the presidential campaign of Kamala Harris, but Fox's Brooke Seaman tells us who has.
Other big names aren't falling in line either, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. The Clintons, on the other hand, say they are, quote, honored to join the president in endorsing Vice President Harris and say they will do whatever they can to support her. But the Clintons are not alone. Since Biden's big announcement, 178 Democratic lawmakers have followed suit in endorsing Harris, along with more than half a dozen governors, including Gavin Newsom of California, Kathy Hochul of New York, and Roy Cooper of North Carolina. Brooke Singman, Fox News.
And Democrats and Republicans are both wondering how the rest of the race will play out. Republican Party of Texas Chair Abraham George believes that now that Biden is out, do Democrats even believe he should fill out the rest of his term?
We're trying to figure out if is he fit, according to them, is he fit to continue to be the commander in chief? Is that an option for him now? If he's not fit for a election, why is he fit for continue to be the commander in chief?
And Biden's decision to drop out of the race could affect both parties in Congress. Here's Fox's Chad Pergram.
The switch out at the top of the ticket might not be so much about being able to defeat former President Trump, but saving seats down ballot. The Senate will be tough to hold, period, but a switch at the top could help Democrats with the House of Representatives. The current breakdown is 220 Republicans to 212 Democrats. Democrats just need to flip a handful of those seats. They think that House Republicans are vulnerable. Now, Democrats have done nothing but rail against Republicans and how they've run the House for a year and a half. Republicans gave them plenty of fodder, burning through Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
And South Texas politicians are reacting in different ways to Biden's announcement. Democrats like Congressman Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar praised Biden for his decades decades of service, with Cuellar saying he would support the next Democratic nominee, but did not mention Vice President Kamala Harris. Republican Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz called the Biden situation a scandal that shows everything that is wrong with Washington. De La Cruz went on to call the Biden administration failed and corrupt and said voters must support former President Trump in November. And Texas lawmakers are expressing their reactions to the announcement of Biden's withdrawal.
Austin Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who was one of the first voices to urge the president to drop out of the race, called the decision courageous, putting country over ego in a way Donald Trump never could. State Representative James Tallarico tells KXAN he echoes those sentiments, calling it a stunning act of patriotism.
Yeah, Vice President Harris has my full support, and I have every confidence that she is going to beat Donald Trump this November.
U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Dallas, however, blamed Democrats for it, saying she'd only support Kamala Harris and no one else on the ticket. Eric Lycum, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
And President Biden is canceling a trip to Houston in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Mayor John Whitmire said on Sunday that Biden had planned to be in Houston on Thursday to recognize the city's preparation for the storm. Biden was diagnosed with COVID on Wednesday for the third time, but it's not clear if that's why his trip was canceled. And President Biden is getting plenty of international support in the wake of his announcement that he's exiting the race.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau thanked President Biden on the social platform X, saying he's a great man and everything he does is guided by his love for his country. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the president has achieved a lot for the U.S., Europe, and the world. Ukrainian President Zelensky said in a post, "We will always be thankful for President Biden's leadership. He supported our country during the most dramatic moment in history and assisted us in preventing Putin from occupying our country." While Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov urged Russians to pay attention to the U.S. election, saying a lot can happen between now and November. Jill Nato, Fox News.
And West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is reportedly considering a run for president. Reports say sources close to the Independent have said he's considering re-registering as a Democrat in order to challenge Vice President Harris for the party's presidential nomination. The 76-year-old announced last year that he would not run for re-election to the Senate, saying he believed he had accomplished what he set out to do for West Virginia. It is 6:37. Traffic and weather together in a minute, but first, to check of your money and the world of business, Ed Corey is live at the Bloomberg News Desk. All right, thanks, Ed. News at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy. Here's traffic and weather.
San Antonio's First News, full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Randy Beamer in studio. She's Charity McCurdy. I'm Chris Duell. Mr. T will be back on Thursday. We are standing by to connect with White House correspondent John Decker. In fact, John Decker is there right now. Let's bring him in. He has covered every president dating back to the Bill Clinton administration. Randy Beamer, what do you have for John?
John, what do you think's next in the never-ending dominoes that are falling all over the board these days? When are we going to hear Biden?
Well, first of all, when are we going to hear from the president? He indicated in the statement that he released yesterday that he would be speaking to the nation later in the week. Remember, he's still convalescing, dealing with COVID. I'm sure by this point he's in the concluding stages of dealing with that. But also what's next on the Vice President Harris side is we have to see her continue to coalesce the Democratic base around her candidacy. That's number one. We've seen that just since yesterday afternoon with the endorsements of not only President Biden, but also former President Bill Clinton and a number of other prominent Democrats. But also we have to wait and see who she is considering as her running mate. That's going to be an interesting aspect of this campaign as well.
And John, how challenging is this for the Trump campaign moving forward now that Trump will likely be faced with going head-to-head with a career prosecutor?
Well, it's different. That being said, she's a part of the Biden-Harris administration. So every argument that they plan to make against President Biden as far as the policies that he carried out over the past 3.5+ years certainly also apply to the vice president being part of that team. That means she owns everything. She owns the good. She owns the bad. She owns all of the jobs that have been created during the course of the Biden-Harris administration, but she also owns the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. She was part of that national security team that when that happened in the first year of President Biden's time in office. So she's got to deal with all of those complications as she campaigns and tries to win over people who may not be that familiar with her, even though she is a nationally known figure at this point. And she is the vice president. She still needs to convince some in the party that she is the best person to serve as the standard bearer for the Democratic Party this November.
John, you brought up the issue of running mate. Obviously, you're a savvy observer and reporter on the political front. Who do you think are among the major figures that Kamala Harris might consider as a running mate?
Well, there's Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper is the governor of North Carolina, and he's a Democrat, and he's a two-term governor of the state of North Carolina. He's term limited. That's the reason why he's not running again this election cycle. So Roy Cooper certainly would be in the mix. Also, Andy Beshear, he's the Democratic governor of Kentucky, a Democratic governor in a red state who has won 2 terms statewide in Kentucky. Those are 2 names that I would certainly look for as she considers who she can run with this November.
What about procedurally? The Democratic National Convention or Committee had talked about doing a virtual roll call to make sure they didn't have any problems legally getting the names in so that Ohio, they could be on the ticket there. Do they not worry about that at all now? Will there be a virtual roll call or should there be? Would that be pushing it?
There's still going to be a virtual roll call, which will happen in less than 2 weeks' time. Now, if you are a Democrat and you are ambitious and you want to be the Democratic presidential nominee, you have to get to work. First of all, endorsements are important. A campaign apparatus is important in terms of fundraising, in terms of staffing. But most important, to be considered by the DNC as a possibility to go up against Kamala Harris, you have to get signatures of 300 delegates to the Democratic National Convention. That's a lot. And you're already running behind the 8 ball if you are considering challenging Kamala Harris for the Democratic Party nomination.
And John, what does the latest polling show about Kamala Harris? Is she polling better than Biden in battleground states?
No, that's an excellent question. I have not seen any polling whatsoever as it relates to a head-to-head matchup between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in battleground states. I've seen polling, which is national polling, which shows her doing maybe a point better than Joe Biden was doing against Donald Trump, but still trailing Donald Trump on those national polls. But as you allude to, it's the battleground states that will determine the presidency. So I will await as the days go on those types of polls that come out, which indicate how she's faring in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Those states will decide the presidency in November.
Nobody does it better. White House correspondent and attorney John Decker. We do want to hear from you on the free iHeartRadio app on the Talkback feature. What do you think of Biden dropping out? What do you think of Kamala Harris? What do you think the Democrats will do? And how does this affect the 2024 presidential race? We'll play your comments on the air. More with Randy Beamer in studio coming up. WOAI News Time 646. And Connie, welcome in. Travis, Tim, Jacob, SWAT Cats. What's happening?
I'm going to grab a Beamer
Ooh,
video.
okay, yeah.
To do like a reaction to Biden.
Gosh.
Okay, you mind if I leave audio on? That's cool. All right, we're getting a video for social media of Randy Beamer as director Steven Spielberg. Andrew Zimmel is. Yeah.
Can they get a shot of Andrew Zimmel?
I wish they could.
Imagine, if you will. I don't know who would he be. Okay, so anyway, what do you want me to say and how?
Reaction to
Because
Joe Biden.
I just read prompter.
Reaction to Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race.
And ending it with. I'm sorry.
So you want your question in the
Yes.
video? So okay.
No, I don't need the question.
I see what
I
you're
just
saying.
need you to say what was your instant reaction to Biden dropping out of the race.
Okay.
So, ready?
I think a lot of people like me expected that he would drop out sooner or later. In fact, I had predicted that he would be speaking this sometime this week. But then when it happened, you still wonder, boom, that opens up so many other possibilities that I know they're going to be covering very well here on News Radio 1200 WOAI, San Antonio's first news. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
There you go.
Okay.
That was great. Thanks, guys.
Good stuff.
Yep. And then we talked to Decker, talked to Gonzalez, you've been saying the show.
I forgot. I will do that. In fact, I'll do that ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather. Okay, both of those will be on the podcast. Yeah, sorry, we've got all this crazy equipment everywhere. Sleepy Tim, Travis. I'm not saying you're sleepy, Tim. I'm sleepy, comma, Tim, Travis, Connie.
That's on YouTube, is it?
That is on YouTube, yes.
So what are they saying? Are they saying anything or are they just watching?
Watching, they're saying a lot. My short-term memory is can't recall anything without reading it.
And that's, you have to go to News Radio.
Yeah, no, 1200 WOAI on YouTube. So the 1200 then WOAI.
Already only says that like 3 times.
Yeah. Grumpy Old Fart is in here. Good morning, Grumpy Old Fart. And every time I say that, Tim Merriman goes, Charlie is, no, not Charlie. This Grumpy Old Fart.
Shocked.
Oh. Go ahead. Go again.
Were you shocked? I tell you, were you shocked at this announcement or maybe the timing of it? Was it earlier than you thought?
And again, as we said, we knew it was coming, but it was still shocking. My answer was both.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew it was coming, and yes, I was still shocked.
And then the way it happened with the single announcement
Yeah.
first
Yes.
about he's going to drop out of the race. Just a few minutes later, 20 minutes later,
Yeah.
he's going to endorse.
Because for like 20 minutes, I was thinking, he's
Yeah.
not going to endorse her.
Well, and then he also said before, vote your conscience. But
Yeah, that's right.
an
And that looked
endorsement-
like
it was an endorsement. It wasn't like she's my only pick.
True.
I must vote for her.
just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together. And already this hour, we spoke with Representative Tony Gonzalez and White House correspondent John Decker. Big interviews. If you've missed any of those, we podcast them. Go to WOAI.com and go to the podcast, and you can hear those interviews. More with Randy Beamer in studio coming up. But first, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
Following growing concerns about his mental fitness, President Biden is ending his re-election bid. Vice President Kamala Harris will make her first public comments later this morning at the White House since becoming a presidential candidate. And West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is reportedly considering a run for president as a Democrat. We'll have the very latest coming up right now, traffic and weather together.
So we're going to play. Weather Channel forecast, it's going to be a wet week. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms today. Heavy rainfall possible tonight. High 91, overnight lows in the mid-70s. Morning rain very likely tomorrow with a high of 86. Wednesday, scattered thunderstorms, also a high of 86. Right now, 76 at Randolph Air Force Base, 75 in China Grove. Here, partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's First News, full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Randy Beamer in studio with us through the morning. He'll be with us till 9 o'clock this morning. Always love having Randy on board. And we are asking you your reaction to all of this. Biden dropping out. Kamala Harris, will she be VP? Will she not? What kind of a threat might she pose to Donald Trump in the general election? Charity McCurdy, how do they get us their reaction?
The free iHeartRadio app, you just search 1200 WOAI, hit that red circle. That's the talkback button. Gives you 30 seconds to give us your thoughts.
Let's get a talkback reaction. Here it is. Other guys. Thanks, Ed. Okay, Ed, first of all, thank you for blowing off Randy and me, but everybody loves Charity, so I get it.
Guys.
I get it. But Randy, I think you can
That's
answer
what
that
most
question.
people think, but technically the president, at least while there is still a president and not a vice president, instead of going automatically to the Speaker of the House, the president will name the vice president that has to be ratified by Congress, which is why that won't happen before November or even January. So, and also I think the Democrats aren't going to push Biden out. Republicans would like him to be pushed out. They say if he's not going to run, he's not, fit. But Kamala doesn't have to do that. I think the more urgent need for the Democrats is to just name a vice presidential running mate. That's why you don't hear them focusing on who's going to be vice president now.
Mm-hmm. And the Democrats have less than 30 days to secure a nominee, so they have their work cut out for them. But unreal. I mean, this is history in the making. I mean, there's never been a situation where a president had all the delegates and then decided to quit the race.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there has been, but we're just not old enough. I mean, you had, aside from LBJ.
Yeah.
But did he have
Truman.
delegates in March, though? But in March of the
This is months
68?
ahead.
He didn't.
Yeah.
But see, they chose Democrats differently. Those days.
Okay.
They only had a few primaries, like 15 or 16 primaries. Hubert Humphrey, who wound up with the nomination in 68, didn't have a single delegate from a primary because there were two different tracks. There were primaries, and there were kind of the inside caucus that the party stalwarts ran. But also Truman in 1952, he was running and then dropped out in March as well. And whether or not he had the delegates, he could have had the nomination if he wanted to. I think Estes Kefauver had run, again, on the outside track. He had gotten New Hampshire voters in the New Hampshire primary, the earliest, which at that time was in March. Anyway, kids, turn your books in right after class. What I'm saying is there's no test on this, but it has happened before in history. And then some of that, actually, the one in 68, changed the way that we do have primaries because people weren't happy that Hubert Humphrey went through and got all these delegates without any primaries. They reformed it. There was a commission, the McGovern-Fraser Commission, and they decided that there would be more open primaries.
But it's never happened this close to the election.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I did not expect the Estes Kefauver arrest. Wow.
Senator from Tennessee.
Randy Beamer, man, Mr. Historian.
Opening a book.
My goodness gracious. Let's listen to one more talk back right now. Let's see what we got. Okay, Sherry not feeling the Kamala love, clearly. See, my theory on Republicans saying, Joe, you must resign because you're unfit. You put Kamala Harris in as an incumbent, you're giving her a huge advantage, in my opinion, because anytime she would like to speak from the Oval Office, it makes her look presidential. She would be the president. And if there were a national or a global crisis and she did rise to the occasion, that would be huge for her in the November election. But as Sherry believes, if she sucked as president, then you put her in. That way you can go, see? You really want to elect her? You want to re-elect her? You want to bring her in?
Be careful what you wish for, because it was Joe Biden that said, bring it on. Let's have this debate early. Oops.
Yeah.
And so it could be the same thing. Who knows?
Yeah, September 10th is supposedly that next debate now between Trump and Kamala Harris. But as we talked about earlier, Trump has issued an ultimatum. He wants to be on Fox News, not moderated by ABC. So we don't know if it's going to happen or not now.
Although the other debate turned out pretty well for him with CNN.
Yes.
Nobody talked about the moderators. It was all about the debate. I think he wants the crowd in the background.
Yes.
Which I thought was great not to have a crowd in the background, because you could focus on the people, you could focus on what they said. And it worked out, like I said, well for Trump. But I think it's a power thing at this point. Biden had made the rules before, Trump accepted them. Now Trump doesn't want to do that. It's not his way.
But I wonder if the race is relatively close by debate time. You talk about it being a power thing. I wonder if that point, assuming it's Kamala Harris, if she could say, no, we want to do it here. We know Trump is very good at debates. So if let's say Trump has a 3-point lead at that point, or 2, I think it behooves Donald Trump to debate her, because he tends to, win these debates. He's very, very good on that platform.
He's going to want it his way. So there will be a debate about the debate, a debate about when and where it should be, and then the debate about who won the debate. So I look forward to it all. But who knows? In the meantime, we're going to have fights about rules and fights about what happens and delegates. And it's going to be a fine mess that we're into.
We are continuing full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race. What's next for Democrats and Republicans? We will hear from Texas Senator Ted Cruz coming up at 7:10 in a segment we call Wait Till You Hear This. But right now, Charity McCurdy with all the big stories of this Monday morning, WOAI News Time, 7 o'clock.
Seven o'clock is our time. San Antonio's first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, Biden ends his re-election bid and Democrats begin to rally around Kamala Harris. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes in mornings. Your Weather Channel forecast for this Monday, mostly cloudy with thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90. Showers tonight, storms possible, a low near 75. Right now, 77 degrees. Well, President Biden is ending his re-election bid, becoming the first president in decades not to run for a full second term. Fox's Jared Halpern has more on Decision 2024.
It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, President Biden wrote in a letter posted on social media, but says it is in the best interest of his party and the country to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling the duties as president for the remainder of his term. President Biden's decision not to run for re-election is a stunning departure. He insisted for weeks he would stay in the race, despite a growing number of Democrats calling for him to step aside following last month's poor debate performance. In a follow-up message, the president says he is offering his full support and endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
And speaking to Fox's Mark Levin, Texas Senator Ted Cruz says he does not believe President Biden's health challenges began this year.
The reason they jumped ship is once the American people realized that he was incompetent, they were afraid they're going to lose. So we're now seeing the party circling the wagons around Kamala Harris. They want a coronation.
And former Democratic Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard says Vice President Harris is a warmonger.
The prospect of Kamala Harris making decisions about war and peace and where to send my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way is not only terrifying to us, it should be terrifying to every American.
The Democratic Party chairperson in all 50 states, including Hawaii, have also backed the VP. And Fox's Doug Luzader has more on Kamala Harris's day ahead.
She's scheduled to be speaking around 11:30 Eastern this morning at the second annual White House College Champions Day event, they call it. It's going to be her first time in the public eye since all this news broke. And as Democrats begin moving on from Biden, DNC Chair Jamie Harrison said this: the work that we must do now, while unprecedented, is clear. In the coming days, the party will undertake a transparent and orderly process to move forward as a unified Democratic Party with a candidate who can defeat Donald Trump in November.
And political professionals are not surprised at the Biden decision. SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson believes it was inevitable after the president's dismal debate performance, but he says Biden dug in his heels until the last minute.
We were hearing defiant noises coming out of the White House and out of the Biden family as recently as a couple of days ago. But time was running short. I mean, it's less than a month until the Democratic convention. So if this decision was going to be made, it was time to make it.
And Wilson goes on to say he believes Biden is angry at the number of top Democrats, the president's longtime political allies, who have come out very publicly to demand he leave the race. And some Republicans think President Biden should take things a step further. Fox's Kevin Corke explains.
Mr. Biden no longer facing calls from Democrats to drop out of the race. He's facing calls from Republicans to resign altogether, which of course could now set off a series of showdowns on Capitol Hill as Democrats try to keep him on the job for the next, well, certainly through the election, next 107 days, and then beyond that through January of 2025. But the real reason Mr. Biden is dropping out is simple: donor money. If you've been following this carefully, you know that it really began to dry up in the wake of that disastrous debate performance.
And this comes as West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin is considering re-registering as a Democrat in order to run for president after leaving the party in May. And U.S. Rep. Lloyd Doggett is praising what he calls President Biden's selfless decision to exit the race. The Austin Democrat was the first in the party to call on Biden to step aside. Doggett is the longest-serving member of the Texas congressional delegation, which gave considerable weight to his call for Biden's withdrawal. And Texas Republican leaders are reacting to the president's decision.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott said on X he will ramp up border security infrastructure in the event Kamala Harris becomes president. Abbott also posted, quote, if Biden is unfit to run for the presidency, he is unfit to run the presidency, unquote, and called for him to step down now. Longtime Donald Trump ally Attorney General Ken Paxton simply shared on social media, quote, Trump for the win, unquote. Texas House Speaker Dave Phelan called on GOP voters, quote, to unite as a party to elect strong conservative leaders up and down the ballot this November, unquote. Eric Lycum, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
And clarity regarding how Democrats will go about selecting a new presidential nominee is expected later in the week. The Democratic National Convention Rules Committee will hold a public meeting on Wednesday. It is 7:06, news at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy. Traffic and weather coming up.
San Antonio's First News has our full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Continues Randy Beamer in studio. She's Charity McCurdy. Mr. T has the day off. He'll be back on Thursday, and we've got a big 7 o'clock hour coming for you. 7:20, Mike Opelka from the Pure Opelka podcast. You're going to want to know his reaction to where the Democrats stand right now and what is next for them. 7:40, national correspondent Rory O'Neill, who was at the Republican National Convention last week, his coverage of this big story. And coming up in a segment we call Wait Till You Hear This, we'll hear reaction from Texas Senator Ted Cruz. But first, let's get you caught up on traffic and weather together. Weather Channel forecast, wet in a word. Today, 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms, heavy rainfall expected tonight, high 96, overnight lows in the mid 70s. Morning rain is likely tomorrow with a high of 86. Wednesday, scattered thunderstorms, another high of 86 is forecast. Right now, 76 in Schertz, 75 in Livonia. It is partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's first news. Randy Beamer in studio. He will react with us as we listen to Texas Senator Ted Cruz in a segment we call Wait Till You Hear This. Every weekday morning at this time, we span the globe to bring you the constant variety of audio and certainly a major voice in the Republican Party, certainly in the great state of Texas, is Senator Ted Cruz. Let's listen to his reaction.
Kind of wild.
Wow. Ted Cruz, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And at the top of that audio, Randy, he told you he saw all of this coming. Is Ted Cruz the modern day Nostradamus?
I think so, but he's great. And I'll give him credit for this. A fine, shameless plug of his podcast. At the same time, he's taking a shot at the corporate media that pays for his podcast. And I don't say that in any political way. I'm not,
No.
I am straight down the middle on politics on this one, but it's interesting to see. And there are those people on the Republican side and Democratic side who predicted this. And I think in a way, there are some Republicans that are going to be a little resentful because so many Republicans, as well as Democrats, didn't want to have this election between Trump and Biden. Republicans maybe didn't want Trump. A lot of them, you know, a year ago especially, Democrats didn't want Biden. Democrats are getting their wish. Republicans aren't.
Wow. Interesting
So,
perspective.
and also, that affects Ted Cruz's race against Colin Allred. If there is some excitement in the party and it brings out some young people and people of color who might not have voted, Ted Cruz is in a little more trouble than he thought a few weeks ago.
And one of the polls recently had that as a 3-point race, Cruz against Allred. I don't know if it's really that close, but
Beto was within 2 points.
yeah. Charity?
Yeah, no, I think that this changes everything for Republicans. They have to be on their guard because you have to be careful what you wish for. And now that Biden's out of the race, We're seeing fundraising pick back up now that Kamala Harris has gotten the endorsement and will likely be the nominee for the Democratic Party. I think fundraising overnight jumped to nearly $50 million.
My goodness. Well, we got a lot more coming. You got to hear Mike Opelka's reaction to all of this. He joins us coming right up. We'll get you caught up on headlines, traffic, weather as well. Randy Beamer in studio. We are all over the big story of the day. Biden dropping out. What's next for Democrats and Republicans? We are your source for Decision 2024. WOAI News Time 716. Hey, everybody on YouTube. Kay, welcome in. Good to see you this morning. Connie, welcome in. Same thing. Great to see you. Jacob, Echo 5 Hotel, Travis, Tim. And I know a lot of people don't chat. So if you're here and we don't see your name, we try to give you a shout out if we see your name. But if we don't, thanks for hanging out with us.
And why don't we see your name?
Exactly. Why aren't you chatting with Randy Beamer? How many opportunities do you get to chat with Randy Beamer, the most trusted man in San Antonio?
Completely. Sarcasm
No,
alert.
it's absolutely true. He's just very humble. The most humble man in San Antonio.
I believe you are incorrect.
You are correct, sir. Hi-oh.
Yes, sir.
I miss Ed McMahon.
He's still there. He's
Yes.
with us.
Yes. Yes. Hi-oh. That was such a great show. And I try to tell you, we lived in such great times. The music was spectacular.
Yes.
The Tonight Show, the moon landing, everything.
And it was so much more concentrated, I guess you'd say, because most people knew all the.
Yeah. Oh, you're just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together. And then Mike Opelka from the Pure Opelka podcast. I think he's probably got a few opinions on what's been going on in the world and in politics. But first, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
Republicans are demanding President Biden resign now after ending his re-election bid. VP and presidential candidate Kamala Harris will make her first public comments today at the White House, and Texas lawmakers are reacting to the latest developments in the race for the White House. We'll have the latest coming up. Right now, traffic and weather together.
Weather Channel forecast wet. Get ready. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms. Heavy rainfall expected tonight with a high of 91. Overnight lows in the mid 70s. Morning rain likely tomorrow. High 86. Wednesday, scattered thunderstorms. High 86 right now. 75 in Helotes. 73 in Spring Branch. It is partly cloudy. 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's First News, full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Randy Beamer in studio. She's Charity McCurdy. I'm Chris Duell. Mr. T will be back on Thursday. Gotta hear Mike Opelka's reaction to all that's going on. Randy Beamer, what do you got for Mike?
I got that question. What's your reaction? Did you expect this and in the way that it happened?
Yes and no, Randy. We were talking about it on the golf course on Sunday morning, which is where, all the real discussions happen.
Wow, power
in
broker.
Delaware, somebody said to me, so you think it's today? And I said, if the number comes out right. And they went, what number? Polling? I said, no, it's the golden parachute. Whatever handshake Biden gets to leave will decide when it happens. And I assume the number was achieved sometime late Saturday when they wrote the letter, and then Sunday when the news broke. So this is the way that the Bidens get out, and they get out with dignity. But we still haven't seen Joe. There are questions about the signature on the letter, which is always fun to speculate about. My question is, who's running the damn country? You've got Israel bombing Yemen to get Hamas. China is circling Second Thomas Shoal near the Philippines, and Russia's still bombing Ukraine. Who's in charge?
Yeah, Mike, and that's why you have growing members of the Republican Party calling for Biden to step down now, saying if he's unable to run for another term, he should not continue to serve in the White House. So do you see Biden ultimately finishing out this term?
I don't think so, Charity. My instincts tell me that Biden's brother, Frank, who's now being totally destroyed personally by the White House, the guy who said we're just trying to get as much time with Joe as we have left, kind of indicating that Joe Biden might be sicker than anybody knows. But why would that be the case? We were always told he was vibrant. He was mentally charged up. He couldn't be challenged because he was just so darn sharp. We've been lied to for months and months and months. And for Elizabeth Warren, America's mother-in-law, yesterday to go on television saying, Joe Biden has done a very patriotic thing here by stepping aside. She was one of the enablers too. We're being hoodwinked here, and I suggest that this mask is dropping quickly. He may be out of there even before the election.
Excellent Elizabeth Warren impersonation, by the way, Mike. And I got to help me out on this, Mike. A lot of Republicans, Elise Stefanik and others saying, hey, Joe Biden, if you can't run, you can't serve, you must resign. From my perspective, do the Republicans really want Kamala Harris to be an incumbent? If you give her the presidency, whenever she speaks from the Oval Office, she's going to look really presidential in an election year. And what if there's a national or a global crisis and she does well before November? That could affect the race. Are you concerned about President Kamala Harris before November?
No, I take that bet. We got 3.5 years of experience. We have a mountain of sound clips of her in what should have been official positions where she represents the president, sounding like a complete bobo, sounding like a teen beauty pageant competition, answering questions. It's just, I realize it's a risk, but that's a bet I would take.
I want to go back to what you said earlier about the payout that you were concerned about that Biden was taking. I'm not sure I know what you mean by that.
Come on, Randy.
I know what you mean, but I want you to flesh that out.
Everything about the Biden presidency, about the Biden political career has been transactional. This is, 10% for the big guy, whatever you want to say. Hunter said he's been given half his salary to his dad for 30 years. Joe Biden lives in the most expensive beachfront property in my state, the state of Delaware, and he did it on a public servant's salary. It's just absolutely ridiculous to think there isn't more behind this. And with all these wealthy donors saying, hey, we're not going to give money until Joe gets out, somebody in the Biden family, maybe Jill, is saying, what's in it for me?
You can get a whole lot more Mike Opelka from his pure Opelka podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. We recommend the iHeart Radio app. Another episode will drop today. You don't want to miss it. He is brought to us by Randy Adams Incorporated. We certainly appreciate that. Coming up at 7:40, we will go to a national correspondent Rory O'Neill. Last week, he was at the Republican National Convention. Today, he is all over this huge, historic story. President Joe Biden dropping out of the race. Will it be Kamala Harris? Is it a done deal, or who might throw a monkey wrench into that? We'll talk about it coming up. Charity McCurdy with everything you need to know at the bottom of the hour. More with Randy Beamer in studio. WOAI News Time 727.
7:32 is our time. San Antonio's first news. Good Monday morning. I'm Charity McCurdy. Among our top stories, President Biden bows out of the race for the White House, and Kamala Harris is looking for party support as she wins Biden's endorsement. Details ahead. First, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes in mornings. Your Weather Channel forecast for this Monday, mostly cloudy with thunderstorms this afternoon, a high near 90, showers tonight with storms possible, a low near 75, right now 77 degrees. Well, Vice President Kamala Harris reacts to President Biden's decision to not continue on to accept the Democratic nomination for president. Fox's Gernal Scott has more on Decision 2024.
Vice President Harris's first thoughts were of gratitude, thanking President Biden for his decades of service, and called it an honor to serve with him and watch as he puts the American people and the country above everything else. Her thoughts then turned to President Biden endorsing her as nominee. The vice president said she is honored, but plans to earn and win her party's nomination. Former President Bill Clinton and former party nominee Hillary Clinton have endorsed the vice president, as has South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, whose support vaulted President Biden to the White House 4 years ago. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Speaking to Fox's Hannity, South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem made this prediction if Harris becomes the Democratic presidential nominee.
I believed she'd pick a woman to be her vice president, so it's a historic ticket, and they can change the whole conversation.
Speaking to Fox News, Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz predicts Republican attacks will look similar if Harris becomes the nominee.
Republicans are going to try to make the same case against her they were making against Biden. Oh, it's the border. Oh, it's Israel. It's going to be the same playbook. Obviously, she is her own person.
And Democrats and Republicans are both wondering about how the rest of the race will play out. Republican Party of Texas Chair Abraham George believes that now that Biden is out, do Democrats even believe he should fill out the rest of his term?
We're trying to figure out if is he fit? According to them, is he fit to continue to be the commander in chief? Is that an option for him now? If he's not fit for a election, why is he fit for continue to be the commander in chief?
Meantime, House Speaker Mike Johnson is calling on the president to resign, saying if he's not fit to run for president, he is not fit to serve as president. And Biden's decision to drop out of the race could affect both parties in Congress. Here's Fox's Chad Pergram.
The switch out at the top of the ticket might not be so much about being able to defeat former President Trump, but saving seats down ballot. The Senate will be tough to hold, period, but a switch at the top could help Democrats with the House of Representatives. The current breakdown is 220 Republicans to 212 Democrats. Democrats just need to flip a handful of those seats. They think that House Republicans are vulnerable. Now, Democrats have done nothing but rail against Republicans and how they've run the House for a year and a half. Republicans gave them plenty of fodder, burning through Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
And South Texas politicians are reacting in different ways to President Biden's bowing out of the race. Democrats like Congressman Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar praised Biden for his decades of service, with Cuellar saying he would support the next Democratic nominee, but did not mention Kamala Harris. Republican Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz called the Biden situation a scandal that shows everything that is wrong with Washington. And one of President Biden's staunchest supporters has been San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg.
Mayor Nirenberg took to X, calling Biden a transformational leader and a friend of San Antonio's working families. He praised the president for standing up to special interests to cap insulin costs in a city where 1 in 6 is diabetic, and for standing by Uvalde, pushing for more gun controls. Quote, he took the slings and arrows that come from stepping into the arena and throughout it all reminded us that strength of character matters. I'll be forever proud to call him partner and friend, unquote. Eric Lycum, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
And President Biden is canceling a trip to Houston in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Mayor John Whitmire said Sunday that Biden had planned to be in Houston on Thursday to recognize the city's preparation for the storm. Biden was diagnosed with COVID on Wednesday for the third time, but it's not clear if that is why his trip was canceled. It is 7:37. Traffic and weather together in a minute, but first, to check of your money and the world of business. Ed Corey is live at the Bloomberg News Desk. All right, thanks, Ed. News at the top and bottom of every hour, along with breaking news as it happens. I'm Charity McCurdy, here for traffic and weather.
San Antonio's First News, full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans. Coming up, we will speak with SMU poli-sci professor Dr. Calvin Gilson. Has a lot of thoughts on where we stand politically right now. We'll do that at 7:50. But right now, let's check in with national correspondent Rory O'Neill. Rory was at the Republican National Convention last week, and this morning he's all over this big story. Randy?
Rory, do you think some Republicans are actually a little bit jealous in a way that Democrats get to have that person at the top of their ticket that isn't a Trump or Biden?
Well, I think, it brings at least a bit of energy to this race. We knew that going into this, 70% of Americans did not want that Trump-Biden rematch. So at least this stirs the pot a bit and may get some different groups interested in turning out. We've said before that apathy was one of the biggest issues going into this election. This may be a cure for that, but it's, boy, we are in uncharted territory.
That's for sure, Rory. Do you get the sense that Democrats are divided over backing Kamala Harris? I mean, there's still some big names that have not yet endorsed her.
Yeah, I saw, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. You wonder if they did that intentionally because there's plenty of criticism, and it's, maybe justifiable by Republicans saying, boy, you Democrats, you talk about trying to be the party of democracy, but you are disenfranchising 15 million Democrats who voted for Joe Biden. So perhaps they're withholding their endorsements to make it look like Harris has to earn the nomination. So it's not just a coronation. Maybe it's part of the process that really is just all razzle dazzle, but no merit to it, as it looks like Harris may cruise to this nomination at this point, since we got word that Senator Manchin's not in, Governor Beshear is not. Harris is not facing a lot of opposition so far.
I like how you put it, Rory, and I think you were spot on. This might be a cure for apathy. While there could be challenges to Kamala Harris to get the nomination, I think the smart money is that she will. Any thoughts on those who might be her running mate, if indeed the time comes?
Well, that's where it gets interesting, because Harris would probably be the most liberal president ever. So do they try to go to a middle of the road, perhaps someone with a military background who might make a good VP selection? Maybe Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. His name has certainly been tossed around a bit. Also, a lot of governors in the mix. Governor Whitmer, Governor Shapiro, Governor Moore. Shapiro comes from Pennsylvania, and it's the Keystone State, and it's the Keystone for anyone who wants to be president. So you put him on the ticket. That's going to go a long way to putting Pennsylvania in your column. So certainly his name will also be near the top of any list.
So practically, how will Kamala win and earn that nomination, as she said she wants to, before the virtual roll call in a couple of weeks? And then how does she roll out her pick?
Right. Well, exactly how that works is that's the bit of a mystery. And if it's just that virtual program that's done so that they can get on the ballot for Ohio without those legal challenges, that's still in the mix. But, they may want to do something. We are in the time of the Olympic Games, right? So they want to have her clear some hurdle so she's not just handed the medal, essentially. And how do they set that up for that to work? That's going to be a bit of a wait and see. They don't want chaos at their convention, I don't think. We saw how well the RNC went for the Republicans last week. Really was textbook, the way that all the Republicans came together, in large part following the events of what happened Saturday a week ago with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
And Rory, Harris has reportedly raked in $49 million since Biden dropped out of the race. And I take it she's going to be privy to Biden's campaign cash as well. Does that signal big time trouble for Republicans?
Well, certainly for Democrats who are trying to challenge her as well. But look, it's $96 million that would come her way as a result. So that certainly goes a long way to helping her launch her campaign. But the window is a short one. And she's got a lot of baggage, especially when it comes to border issues that she's going to have to overcome. It's not going to be a cakewalk for her, but she certainly has stirred the pot in this campaign and gotten a lot more people focused and paying attention now, with just over 100 days to go before Election Day.
Our thanks to national correspondent Rory O'Neill. As we continue with Randy Beamer in studio, we will speak with SMU political science professor Calvin Gilson, who has been studying politics for years and years and years, and he has some big ideas on where we stand now and what is next for Republicans and for Democrats. WOAI News Time 745. Just ahead of headlines, traffic, and weather together. And then we're going to take a deep dive into where we stand right now politically with SMU political science professor Calvin Gilson. But first, let's get you caught up on traffic and weather together. But first, Charity McCurdy, what stories are you following?
Well, President Biden is dropping out of the presidential race and throwing his support to his Vice President Kamala Harris. Former President Obama has yet to endorse Vice President Harris, and Republicans want Biden to resign now, saying he's unfit to finish out his term. Well, the very latest coming up right now, traffic and weather together.
Weather Channel forecast, gonna be wet. 70% chance of afternoon thunderstorms. Heavy rainfall expected overnight. High today 91, overnight lows in the mid-70s. Likely rain tomorrow morning when you drive to work with a high of 86. Wednesday, scattered thunderstorms, high 86 as well. Right now, 76 at Fort Sam Houston, 78 in Seguin. It is partly cloudy, 77 at News Radio 1200 WOAI. San Antonio's First News, Randy Beamer in studio as our full team coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race and what's next for Democrats and Republicans rolls on, and somebody who can make sense of where we stand at this moment in America is certainly that's SMU political science professor, Dr. Calvin Gilson. Randy Beamer, what do you have for the doctor?
Well, I'd like to know, I know we'll get back to the big picture nationally, but as an SMU professor, longtime Texan, what do you think this will do, if anything, for the down ballot races across the country, including in Texas and the Ted Cruz, Colin Allred race?
Yeah, I think that, the best hope of the Democrats is that the transition from Biden to Harris will stabilize the whole Democratic campaign apparatus, both nationally and in the states. Now, that depends upon Harris coming out of the gate quickly, performing well, settling people's expectations. But if that does happen, then all the fundraising starts to come back and all the campaign apparatus at the national level gets behind Harris. And it gives confidence down the ticket throughout all of the states, including Texas. It doesn't mean that it changes the dynamic of the race, but it returns it to where we were before that debate, with Cruz being the favorite, being up 3 to 5, 6 points, something like that. And so Allred has to cut into that between now and Election Day, but he won't have all the turmoil undercutting him.
And Dr. Gilson, as far as this Trump-Harris potential debate taking place September 10th, how do you expect that to play out? And could that in itself decide Kamala Harris's fate, much like it did Biden's?
Yeah, it'll be a big deal, certainly. And I wouldn't be surprised if one or the other side asked for another debate or two. Usually the campaign that is behind, which would be Harris, want that extra debate. But Trump is very proud of his debating skills and says he'll debate challengers anywhere, anytime. So we'll see whether that happens. But the debate that we saw between Biden and Trump was a catastrophe, because whether or not Biden was sick or whatever it was, he was almost uncommunicative. And he not only couldn't make the points that he wanted to make about abortion and other issues that the Democrats think favor them, he was unable to challenge Trump, no matter how far Trump was off the facts and into the lies that he sometimes tells. So in a debate, that's what you're trying to do. You have a plan to make the points you think work best for you and to challenge your opponent on the points that they think work best for them. He wasn't able to do either one. Harris will do much better. We'll just see how much better.
Dr. Gilson, you mentioned it would benefit Kamala Harris and the entire Democratic Party if Harris comes out of the gate quickly. We know the Democrats notoriously don't always agree. There might be a number of Democrats who would love to see this go to an open convention. What do you think the odds of that are? Or do you think that the Democrats will coalesce around Kamala Harris relatively quickly?
Yeah, the Democrats have already coalesced around Harris pretty quickly. More than half of the sitting House members who are Democrats, most of the senators, and half of the Democrat governors have already endorsed Harris, and more will do so in the coming days. But a few people, including former President Obama, Schumer in the Senate, and Jeffries in the House, have not yet, because they want to give a little bit of time and take away this idea that Republicans will push that this